Oh, hello. It's me, your old pal Jeff. How you been? Uh, I'm back again with another drawing video, and today I'm doing a Star Wars caricature. Um, this was commissioned by a client of mine. Usually do logo designs and stuff for the client, and this was a birthday present. I think his girlfriend decided to buy him this caricature of him as Obi Wan Kenobi. And he doesn't really have the beard and stuff that Obi Wan Kenobi has, so he's sort of just a Jedi wearing Obi Wan's robes. But anyway, this was a lot of fun to do. I get commissioned a lot to do caricatures that are just people standing there or whatever, because it's for like a business website or something like that. And it's really fun to be able to draw people in like a costume or something, draw them as something different. And I had a lot of fun doing it. This is one of those things that I had to do a couple of times. I started it, and I wanted to have him standing in like a cool pose with the lightsaber. And I was looking at reference online, and I found a picture of Obi Wan from the prequels, and he was kind of standing with the robes, and he kind of just standing there holding a lightsaber. It was kind of a cool pose. It looked, so I wanted to try something like that, and I got all the way through the under sketch there, like this one you see, it's the red lines, and it just didn't come out. It was very stiff, and that's something that I've found over the years. It's hard to draw characters it's harder to draw them just standing there versus in motion, believe it or not. You would think that, at least for me, you would think that it would be easier, but it's a lot easier for me to draw them doing something with their arms or their legs, rather than just standing. It's like, to make it look interesting or appealing, that's really hard. That I think you have to be a really good artist to be able to do that. There's great artists like painter Frank Frazetta. He kind of captures that sort of motion and movement in characters that are just standing. And that's something someday I hope to get to that point, to be able to do that. You always want it to look interesting. At least I want it to look interesting, and I want it to, not just be boring standing characters. So, long story short, I threw away those pencils and started from scratch. That's a lot easier to do when you've done it digitally, because you can just select it all and erase it. Drawing it, I can draw it a little quicker than I would on paper. And sometimes when you're doing something on paper with it's harder to get rid of that and start over. It just feels like you've already committed it. It's already permanent, but it's not. It doesn't always feel permanent. And there's that can be an unfortunate feeling when you've completed something. It almost feels like your complete illustration isn't a permanent thing. But when it comes to the sketches and the pencil, that you can erase and go back. And so that's what I did here. I went back and went for something a little more interesting that was more of an action pose, and I think it came out a lot better. Originally I was trying to go off of the original Star Wars trilogy for Obi-Wan and his robes. He has kind of that tunic thing underneath his big brown robe that goes all the way down to his feet. And I don't know why I chose to do that. I guess because the original trilogy is a lot better than the prequels. And so I was trying to, I guess, pay homage to that. But when you do that, if his robe was going all the way to his feet, you can't see the character's feet, can't see the way he's standing, and it just looked boring. It was just boring. It was just a lot of fabric hanging there. So I kind of went with the Ewan McGregor version a little more and did that shorter tunic, and that way you could see his boots and you could see the way he's standing, and so you get that sense of urgency, and it's a little more action packed, and so that's that. I mean, the rest is history, and I went on to inking it. You'll notice that the lightsaber in the drawing is black at the moment. I actually drew that on a different layer because later on when I go into the coloring stage, I'm gonna do some interesting tricks to make the lightsaber look like it's glowing, and that black line will then be white, and there will be a bluish glow behind it. And I needed that to be on a separate layer. I need those ink lines to be on a separate layer from Obi Wan. And I don't think it's in my inking of the lightsaber was in the video here. I cut a lot of stuff out because this is a pretty long one. But when I first drew it, it wasn't at that angle in this hand. I actually drew it horizontally first, just to get all the little details right and straight and lined up, and then I turned it on its axis to fit it in his hand. And this lightsaber is based on Obi Wan Kenobi's lightsaber, or what I found on the internet that said it was Obi Wan Kenobi's lightsaber. And so yeah, that's the fun part. And then of course I have to draw the client's face, and so it's probably as complicated as the rest of the drawing because it's tricky. It's a caricature, and caricatures are always tricky. I think I've talked about caricatures before. I did the SpongeBob De Niro video. It's also on this channel if you want to go back and watch it. But this is more of like a comic book style one. I mean, it's still cartoony, but I didn't exaggerate it too much. And I don't really, a lot of times when I do caricatures of real life people, I don't exaggerate too much because unless they specifically request it, because you don't want them to look too ugly or silly depending. It also depends on what it's for, but a lot of times I'm doing it for businesses and stuff like that. But for this client, it was, he wanted to be drawn as Obi-Wan, so it's kind of more of what I would call my comic book style. I have a lot of artwork that is very cartoony, and, this is still cartoony. It's not like I draw super realistically or anything like that, but I'm drawing it a little more proportioned to real life stuff, as opposed to being really exaggerated in the features and stuff like that. And the client sent me handful of photos of his face at different angles, and I just studied his face and tried to get to know it a little bit. It can be hard if you don't know the person and you're looking at photos. So when I do commissions like this, I ask people to send me as many photos as they can from different angles, because a photo's flat, it's 2D, and you can't see from every angle, and sometimes the lighting in the photo can kind of play tricks on sort of how long somebody's nose is, or the way their chin looks or whatever. So if you have more than one photo, you can kind of sort of put it together and figure out how that person looks in real life. And so yeah, you'll notice the inking went pretty quickly. I mean, this video is sped up, but even sped up, you can tell that the process of inking his face and doing the penciling was already done in this one. But the whole process of doing that face takes a lot longer than the whole body, because it's the most important part when you're doing a caricature or a portrait, you want that person to look like themselves. You want, that's tricky, and so you got to spend a lot of time on it. But then now comes the fun part, the coloring. I'm using Manga Studio as always. A lot of times on these commissions, I will do them in Illustrator depending on what they're for, but this is sort of a personal thing that he wanted, and it wasn't going to be blown. I draw it in a high resolution anyway, and I wanted to be able to do some interesting things with the coloring. It's hard to do that with Illustrator. There's a lot you can do to sort of create these gradients that blend together and stuff, but it's not really made to do this kind of artwork, or at least not in any kind of simple way. And so I do it in Manga Studio. I use the airbrush tool here to sort of give everything some lighting and some form, and I go in. I usually start and go in and create that form, and then I just keep doing that throughout. So you'll keep seeing me adding my little highlights and stuff like that, and all that detail. So something you'll notice that I do is I use the selection tool to select an area. If it's just flat, you can use the magic wand. And Manga Studio has a nice little feature with the magic wand tool where you can sample from all layers, and so you can kind of select in between where the line work is and stuff like that. But it depends on how I want the lighting, but I'll select that area so that I don't go outside of it with the airbrushing and stuff. I guess that seems obvious, and you'll notice here that's one benefit to working digitally that I really like, is sometimes I'll get through adding all the shading and the lighting and stuff, and the color just doesn't look quite how I envisioned it. So I can select that entire area, and then I can go in and do a tonal correction and adjust the hue of hues. Usually do like a hue saturation thing. And so that's what I did with the robe, because it was too orangey and looked too close to the boots for me, and I wanted it to be a little darker. And I was using, the whole time I'm doing this, I had my Samsung tablet propped up next to me with photos of the client and some photos of Obi Wan Kenobi, and I used that for color reference to kind of get a good representation of Obi-Wan's clothing and stuff like that. You'll see I'm doing some little shines on the boot there, and that's kind of a comic book coloring technique that I learned over the years. It's just I think they call them cuts in some of the books I've read, where you usually take a selection and use gradients. That's how they used to do it. Everyone kind of uses airbrushing and stuff now that software is a little more developed, and but you take and you do your one large shiny area, and then you kind of take your airbrush tool and make it a little smaller and do another little small shiny area on top of that. And so it kind of creates these different levels of lighting to create that shine. And something I'm kind of practicing a lot, I'm trying to get better at doing this sort of thing and this type of coloring, and keeping it blended but not too blended. I kind of like the way that the light has sort of like a harsher edge to it, where you can see that separation between the shadow and the lighting. But sometimes in like something where the form's a little rounder, you want it to be a little softer, a little more gradiented, the way that color flows from light to dark. And so I'm kind of still trying to really get better at knowing when to make it kind of that sharper, crisper edge, and when to kind of give it that more subtlety. And you know, with the line art, with this bold black line art that I do, I want that to be, I got to take that into consideration too. You know, I don't want to be over detailed with that coloring and really overdo it, because it'll take away from the line art. You know, it's kind of, you know, when you have those black lines, it's a flat drawing. You're trying to represent something that is normally three-dimensional in, you know, a flat, you know, all artwork's flat, but, you know, doing it in the line art, you're sort of trying to imply form with it. And when you add color, then you're sort of taking it a step further, and you're painting it, but you don't want to go beyond that to where you add a lot of detail in the lighting and a lot of shading and things like that, to where you suddenly have this full painting underneath your line art. Then it's like, what's the point of that line art? You can just delete that and just paint something. So it's kind of a balance, and you know, I wouldn't have the patience to go too overly detailed. I've tried like more detailed digital paintings before. That's something that I wouldn't say I can do it, but I wouldn't say I'm any kind of expert on it. It takes a lot of patience and a lot of time invested compared to doing sort of a comic book style piece of art like this. I always go back in. I've done this on some of my previous videos. I go back in with with just the regular pen tool, and it would be the brush tool in Photoshop. It's the pen tool in Manga Studio, or a pen tool in Manga Studio. And I go in and sort of like give it these crisper shadows after I'm done. You know, where two objects would be very close to each other, and so you'd have that really dark shadow. And so I take the darkest color and I use that, and it sort of cuts through and kind of makes it pop a little more, and makes those overlapping elements stand out from one another. Well, anyway, I'm running out of things to say about this. I mean, it's these videos are kind of long. I thought I would be able to, I would think of more things, but I might jump. I think I'm going to jump ahead here in a minute. But yeah, I'm adding shadows and really trying to make this look like it's something three-dimensional. I'll jump ahead and there we go. His face has got some shading and stuff. That's all you missed, but I think you get the idea. You know, it's just about adding light and like on his fingers here, and you know, creating form. And yeah, it looks pretty good, if I do say so myself. These are always tricky doing fists and hands, because you got all these little fingers and stuff like that, and you got to put the light, make sure the lighting all looks right. It's not like when you do an arm and it's sort of a cylinder shape, so you just run that airbrush along it to sort of shade it. This is like a lot of cylinders connected to spheres and stuff. And if that doesn't make sense to you, I apologize. That's kind of like something they teach you in art class, or at least they did in my art class. In a lot of books. I think I learned it first in How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way. But everything that you draw is composed of basic shapes. There's spheres, cylinders, cones, cubes, and so that's what I mean when I say that. And here I'm adding I'm lightening up the area where his glasses are, because I figure, he's got glasses on. It's a lens. It's sort of, I had a little shine on there to sort of create the look as if there's glass, and the lens would sort of be focusing light on his eyes a little bit, and so I brightened that up, and then it looks more like there's glass in his glasses. And I used the airbrush tool to create a little white shine to create the illusion that there's glass there. So here I'm now working on the lightsaber. There's a lot of little details on these things, and just doing the best I can. It's metal, so I'm trying to go in and the thing when you're doing metal is to do kind of like a high contrast between the lights and the darks. It's like the light, there's a lot reflecting on the metal. I use the inking to put the little like dark shimmer in there where it separates the light and the dark, so that makes it a little easier. And this is the thing I was talking about earlier, where I'm going to change the lightsaber. I think I adjusted what am I doing? I think I adjusted this a little bit, and then I added little sparks to it or whatever, and then I colored it white. The best way to do that is to select your layer, and then on your layers palette there's a button. In Manga Studio, it looks like a little square with like a checkerboard pattern. It's lock transparency, and when you lock the transparency, you can fill an entire layer, and it only fills what is actually drawn on that layer. And so you can select an area, but it won't fill in where the transparency is. So if you have something a certain color, like a line like this, you can then fill all white, and that's what I did. And so I think I might have done like a really, really light blue and gave it a little bit of blue. And then what I did is on a layer below that, I took the airbrush tool and added another soft, like dark, or more vibrant blue. And so it gives this appearance of sort of a glowing rod. And that worked out nicely. And then after I was done creating the lightsaber, you'll notice I'm creating like a little rim light on everything. I think I'm using like a dense watercolor. There's a brush in Manga Studio. I think it might be one of the standard brushes. I could be wrong. It could be one I downloaded. It kind of does this cool blending thing. It acts like paint a little bit. And so I took this light blue color, and it sort of blends well. It's kind of got like a sharp edge to it, but it blends well with the other colors when you release pressure on the pen, and it creates a nice little like shine. So I figure, that's going to be, that light from the lightsaber is obviously going to be casting some light onto his clothing and stuff that's nearby, and so that's what I was attempting to do. You'll see I was playing around trying to do some maybe some areas where it was more reflecting on the robe, but then I abandoned that because it wasn't looking very good to me, and it kind of makes his robe look too shiny. His robe should be more matte, and that's what I'm doing here. I'm trying to create, it all looked too shiny anyway, so I actually took a watercolor brush with a texture, one that I downloaded from Ray Friendon, I believe, and I added this texture to his robe. And this is a stock photo I had of sort of a kind of a textured, maybe a watercolor background or something like that, and the client had asked me if I could throw something in the background, and so I said, I could do space or something like that. It was kind of a last minute afterthought. And so I decided I wanted to create like I didn't want just flat black or something like that. I wanted it to look interesting, like there's debris and there's stars and things like that. And so I found that I have this stock photo, and I put it in there and I adjusted. It's like it started out like a light blue, and actually adjusted it a lot longer. I had to cut the video down. I played with it forever to try to get that right dark blue. You see I'm playing with it again, and kind of make it a space color. And I finally did that, and then I used there's like a little symbol sprayer or something here in Mega Studio that has some stars, and so I used that for stars. Feels like cheating, but I don't think it's cheating. It worked out really nicely, so it kind of gives this effect of space debris and stuff like that. And after I'm done with this, I added I don't think I kept that process. It took me a little bit to get it right, but I added a little Death Star floating out in space there. It took a long time to figure out how to get that right. I didn't want to rob a picture off the internet or anything. I wanted it to be something I drew, and so but I didn't want to sit there and detail it too much, so I was trying to figure out how can I draw a simple Death Star. But that it took me quite a while to figure out how I wanted to do that. But yeah, I got that space background. It looked really good after adding the stars, and I kind of added a little transparent edge to it to sort of fade it off into the white. And so it's sort of like something that you can place onto the background of a website, like the client did, posted on it's on his website now, and it looks good. But yeah, that's that. I'll try to get better at finding things to talk about. I feel like I always forget what I have all these ideas of stuff to talk about with these drawings, and then I sort of forget, or the videos are too long. Maybe I need to make them shorter. But anyway, thanks for watching and listening to me ramble on about this stuff. You can follow me on Twitter. I'm at MilkmanJeff, which is something I should probably change. I don't know. I used to work at a dairy department, or in a dairy department at a grocery store for a long time, and when Twitter first came around, I didn't realize how important social media was going to be in my career as a freelancer. And so it's kind of a weird handle to have, I suppose. But you can also check me out on my website at jeffmorinart.com, and if you want to commission me for caricature or drawing similar to this, all my contact info's there. You can get a hold of me, and I can give you a price quote, and I can do something just like this for you. I can put your face on Yoda. I can make you Darth Vader. It doesn't have to be Star Wars. It could be something else. Yeah, and I'll post a link in the description to this drawing, so you can see the full thing, and you can see it done with the Death Star that I spoke of. The drawing will appear at the end of the video here, but I just figure you might want to see it up close, or a little closer anyway. I don't usually put super high resolution drawings on the internet, but you'll be able to zoom in enough to kind of see it, and yeah. But thanks for watching, everyone. I'll talk to you next time, and this has been me, Jeff Morin, drawing for you, sort of. All right, bye.